everybody, welcome to my channel. My name is Sharon and this is a channel that is dedicated to all things related to narcissism. I make videos every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday on all types of topics related to narcissism. So if you haven't already, please take a moment to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any videos. I would really appreciate it if you gave the video a thumbs up. It's a free way you can help me out, and definitely don't forget to leave a comment because I like to read what you have to say. So in today's video, I'm going to be talking about my ex getting narcissistic supply at a mental hospital and how it's important and crucial to understand that good supply can give you the false impression that a narcissist is stable. That's very dangerous. That's a very dangerous mistake to make. Before I get into the video, I'm going to give you a little bit of an update about what's been going on with me. Typically, I do that on Fridays, but I've missed the last several weeks. So finally it's November, so I can say next month, I'm going to get to freedom. I'm going to take my kids, we're going to leave the state, and we're going to finally be free. However, it's a stressful time right now because in between now and when I actually cross that state border, anything could go wrong. I'm living in fear every day of my ex finding out. So for those of you that don't know, I've been separated from my ex for 2 years, but I'm still legally married to him. So I spoke to a lawyer over the summer and she was telling me her advice is that for my safety and the kids' safety, we need to leave the state and then have me file for divorce. The reason for this is my 15-year-old son. So I have 2 kids. My daughter's 18, so she's aged out, so that's fine. My ex doesn't have anything to do with my kids at all. Nothing, not one thing. For a year and a half, he hasn't seen them, talked to them, communicated with them. I mean, nothing. Text, email, absolutely nothing. So he's essentially abandoned the kids. And I'm going to just say my son at this point because he's the one that counts being underage. So even though he has nothing to do with our son, if he wants to, if I file for divorce in this state, he could cause me to stay here until my son is 18. He can decide that he suddenly wants to have a lot of things to do with my son. He can have a say in where I live, every single thing connected to my son. Now, this is a man who doesn't care, but he will want to hurt me. Narcissist, and my ex is just like this. He's cruel, abusive, vindictive. He will want to hurt me. He doesn't know how I live my life. He doesn't know the things that I do. If he finds out, he actually might come kill me. Truly, like, think about my channel. He would be livid if he found out about this. If he knew half of the things that I do, 1% of the things that I do, he would go crazy. So it's everything he can't find out. So I'm living essentially in fear all the time until I get out of the state. I'm afraid he's going to find out. So every day I live with that fear. It's terrible. It's traumatizing. And I feel like I have like a 50-pound weight in my stomach all the time. I just need to make it to the end of December. I can't leave beforehand. I wish I could. I can't. I'm moving out of state. There's too many things I have to do. I have a lot of animals I need to deal with. And I'm moving with Joe. He has things on his end that he has to deal with too. So it can't happen before the end of December. We made it happen in December by pure will. So this is the situation. Please pray for me because I really do live in this fear. I just want to have my life. I want to raise my kids. I want to have a family. I want to have a good life. I gave my ex 20 years. He had every opportunity to have a family with me, and he didn't want to. I mean, he's a narcissist. He can't. There are realities to that. I'm not willing to give up the rest of my life. Joe and I were talking last night, and we were talking about our kids and the things that we wanted for them. He has 2 kids as well. And the way that we wanted to raise our kids didn't happen because our partners were narcissists. There are real realities to that. Of course, there are also realities that we have to accept. I'll talk about myself from this point on. But, I stayed with an abusive person. That's a really hard thing to live with. I didn't know he was a narcissist. I didn't know what narcissism was until a couple of years ago, but I did know that he was abusive. Now, I also grew up in a narcissistic home, and my mother stayed with my father. So with her actions, she taught me how to live your life. I went into the exact same thing. So my actions are telling my children that you should stay with somebody who is abusive to you. I am not willing to ever do that again. I can't go back in time. I wish I could. I cannot go back in time and change mistakes, decisions I made yesterday. But going forward, I can make the best possible decisions. So, Joe and I have given this a lot of thought. This was not done lightly at all. What we really want to do is raise our 4 kids together at the end of their childhood, launch them into adulthood with a stable background. The stable background we didn't have, the stable background that they didn't have, we want to give that to them. And our dream is that our grandchildren will never know dysfunction. That's so important to us. We want to see this family curse broken in front of our eyes. I don't want to see my daughter become codependent or my son be a narcissist. I don't want to see that happen to Joe's kids either. So this is our plan. It's best for everybody. However, with that said, my son is 15. He's not going to see that today. When I tell him that we're moving out of state, I don't think he's going to be okay with it. I hope I'm wrong. A couple of weeks ago, maybe it was over a month ago, I told you that I had to tell my kids that we were moving out of the house. And I expected my son was going to take it very poorly. He actually took it okay. He was all right with it. I was very surprised. So I hope it's the same situation today with this, but I don't know. Moving out of state is going to be huge. I don't have a choice. And the thing is, I'm going to tell him why. I'm going to tell him why it has to be this way. We have good plans, real plans for a good life, a good future. It can't happen here if for the rest of his childhood I'm living in fear and my ex is jerking me around, pushing me into poverty, or I can't even make my own decision on where I live, and this person's only doing it to hurt us. This is the situation. So hopefully, I do know that eventually my son will understand this. I just hope today that he's not devastated. And when he finds out it's because of his father again, I know he's going to just feel this hatred. And I really just want to leave my ex in the past. I just want him in the past. I want to move forward. I want to take what I deserve. I'm not trying to be a jerk to anybody. He was ruthless and abusive to me. I just want to move on with my kids. That's all I want to do. So hopefully I can get to the end of December and get the heck out of here. So I'm so grateful and appreciative of all your prayers. So now I'm going to go ahead and talk about narcissistic supply. And I'll start off by telling you what it is. Narcissistic supply essentially is the narcissist's fake persona, who they're pretending to be. A narcissist has to have supply. It's not optional. They can't live without it. It's who they are. So narcissistic supply, like a lot of narcissists have different forms of narcissistic supply. So they have different personas. When you really think about who a narcissist is, it's scary and sick. I actually read a fantastic description of what it is, and I'll share this with you now. So narcissistic supply is a form of payment that we give narcissists in the form of attention and admiration in order to be in a relationship with them. So we give them their personality. An alternate personality develops with the supply that we give them. So that's terrifying. Who the narcissist is a pretend person. They don't exist outside of who they're pretending to be. So there's nothing underneath it. So in today's video, I'm going to talk about what is really underneath their fake persona. I saw it, I lived it, and my ex is no different than anybody else. So by June of 2019, there was no turning back in my family. My son turned 13 at the beginning of June, and my ex didn't come home or speak to him on his birthday. Now, I had stopped giving my ex narcissistic supply. This was really the problem, and I was his main source of supply. So he was getting worse and worse. So by the time the summer rolled around, he was horrible. He was sleeping in the basement. He had nothing to do with the family. So he would come home sometimes. About half the week he was home, half the week he just didn't come home. I don't know where he was. I don't know this, I believe he was passed out in his car, but I'm not sure about that. But when he was home, he was barely communicating with any of us. He was living in a dark, damp basement, or he was upstairs in the office on his computer. That was what he did all summer. When he would eat dinner with us, he would not talk. I didn't know what to do. I was living in absolute fear and panic. Something was terribly wrong with him, and I didn't know what the heck to do. I was so scared. I was trying to raise my kids, and the kids were asking me, why is Daddy doing this? What's wrong with Daddy? Because he also used to, at night sometimes when he was home, I'd be watching TV with the kids, or we'd be playing a game or something. He would sit in the dark by himself, just sit there in a chair, just staring at a wall. It was it was creepy. Then he also used to sometimes just lay on the floor. So he would lay on the floor, spread eagle, just laying there. We'd have to step over him. And I had said to him, "What are you doing? Why are you laying on the floor like that?" And he would tell me, like, he would say it like this: "I'm playing with the rabbit." So we had this pet rabbit, and he would just take the rabbit out and he would lay on the floor, and that was him playing with the rabbit. But it was just, the whole thing was horrible. It was trauma inducing. I didn't know what to do. Today, when I think back to it, what I should have done was gotten a restraining order, because I didn't know how I was going to get him out of the house. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to handle this. And now I know I should have went down to the police, got a restraining order. I was afraid that I wasn't going to be able to get him out of the house, but I could have had the police forcibly remove him from the house. I was also afraid how I was going to deal with money. What was I going to do? However, I ended up kicking him out of the house in December with no forethought to it. I didn't expect it to happen that day. It happened when he accused me of beating him up, and Child Protective Services got involved and he tried to get me arrested. At that point, I just kicked him out, and I've survived. I'm not well off, but I survived. So this is why I tell people, when you think, "I'm not going to be able to make it, I can't do it," if there is a will, there is a way. And I know that sounds like a cliche, but it is the truth. Now, I understand, I do, that maybe you can't just leave today. Maybe you need to plan, and maybe you have to accept that you can be living in less than ideal circumstances. But nothing is worse than living with a narcissist. If you're with a narcissist, you really and truly do live in hell. All of you who are with narcissists know this. So this is my situation. I'm living in hell. I was afraid. I didn't know what to do. I'm trying to take care of my kids. I mean, there was one night I went to pick up my kids at midnight. They were out. It was midnight. I didn't want to go pick them up because I was afraid to leave the house, because I was afraid. I mean, this is how bad it was. I was afraid my ex was going to sneak into the house and hide somewhere, and I wouldn't know. So I come home with the kids. So it's midnight, and I'm telling my kids, "All right, guys, I need to search the house. So you stay here. I'm going to search the house because I don't know where your father is." Because, of course, he hadn't come home. So I'm walking around the house. I'm in my basement looking around. I'm in my attic. I'm pushing boxes out of the way. I'm expecting him to be crouched down behind some boxes. That is how bad things were. So come around August. August is the night he went to the mental hospital. So he had not come home yet again. So I was just so used to it at this point. But this time, we got woken up by the police in the middle of the night. Now, my son somehow slept through this. My daughter and I were woken up by the police in the middle of the night, and my ex was out front with a loaded gun. They had to put him in handcuffs. They put him in an ambulance and brought him down to the mental hospital. I go down to the mental hospital. He was in a really bad mood. He was livid that he was there. And they actually had to have a guard watch him because he was so belligerent. So he couldn't even sit there by himself. He had a guard right by him, and they put him in a mental hospital. He was so upset and angry about this mental hospital situation. So when I left to go home, he was just livid. He was so bad. He was yelling and screaming and swearing. I just left. The next day, I go down to the mental hospital to see him, and he was back. He had gorged on supply from when I left him at the emergency room to when he had a few hours in the mental hospital. His cup was runneth over. He was in a mental hospital. His wife and his kids had been traumatized because of how he ended up in the hospital, not to mention the entire summer that we had spent in fear of him. This was the same man who missed his son's birthday, put his family through hell. But all that matters is him. That's all that always mattered. That's how it is with all narcissists. He was getting supply. Finally, he was getting that payment. At the mental hospital, they told him, now he knew this already, but they told him he was an alcoholic. He was very excited to tell me about this. "You know, I'm an alcoholic. That's why I do the things that I do. That's why." Now, think people might not understand. I didn't know this until my ex was in the mental hospital. A mental hospital is generally not the place where you're going to get a real diagnosis. This is more like, you go to an emergency room to deal with the immediate symptoms, but the cause is dealt with later. You follow that up with your primary care. So when you're at a mental hospital, it's kind of the same thing. They're trying to prevent you from hurting yourself or other people. Why you're doing this, that's dealt with later. They're just trying to keep you safe there. So for my ex, like, they told him he was an alcoholic. I mean, he was passed out in his car. That's how he ended up at the emergency room. So they were telling him he was an alcoholic, and he liked being an alcoholic because that was acceptable. He didn't want to have narcissistic personality disorder. That's incurable. That's not a good thing to have. But alcoholism, that's okay. He's getting support from this. And then they were telling him, which he was excited to tell me, how amazing he is, how everybody was so amazed that he's able to stop drinking sometimes. He can go a week or two without touching a drink. Do you know how hard that is? That's so hard. They were telling me that they've never heard of somebody doing that, but I do that. I'm special. The narcissistic supply, cha-ching, 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 cha-ching. He's loaded up on it. And then he's telling me how popular he is at group. Oh, I'm doing a lot of talking. You wouldn't recognize me. I know I don't talk at home. Oh, I'm talking so much. And I'm learning here that I need to communicate. I mean, I'm looking at him truly like he has 16 heads. Really, really, you need somebody to tell you that you're supposed to actually communicate with your family. So here he's telling me this as if I'm supposed to be so impressed. And then he tells me things are going to change. This is actually the best thing that's ever happened to me. Things are really going to change. I'm going to start going to AA, and I'm going to get better. You'll see. I'm going to be the best husband ever. I'm going to be the best dad ever. Now, meanwhile, it hadn't escaped my mind that he didn't ask how the kids were. He didn't ask how I was. It was just all about him. I visited him another day, and I'll never forget this. This is just etched in my mind. Here I am, I go there, and you can't just walk into a mental hospital. So they had so I was at the door, the double doors, and one of the, actually both doors had a little window in it so I could see in. There he was. I had to pick up this phone outside, call, give this certain number and this passcode, and then get his permission to let me come in. It was this whole stupid process, but I could see him there. I could see him, and he's smiling at me, waving like we're great friends, and he's holding this root beer. Now, first off, he has a little tray, like a school child with a tray with a sandwich on it. Oh, I hope you don't mind. I have to eat lunch because I don't want to miss lunch, but I'm missing lunch with my friends so I can talk to you. I'm really learning to communicate. And look, I smuggled you out a root beer. I know you can't have anything with caffeine. There's no caffeine here. Caffeine's a drug. So here's your root beer. I mean, it was so pathetic. And then he tells me, oh, and you know what? My friends promised they weren't going to come to this one room so that we could talk, because I was telling them how much I love you and how much I really want our marriage to work out, and how much I love the kids. And, I'm so excited. I wish I had my phone here so I could show people pictures of everybody, but they can see you so they can see my wife. It was so pathetic. And then another time I came there, I happened to wear this t-shirt that said Reptile Mom on it. And he was like, oh, look at that shirt you're wearing. Oh, people are going to be talking to me about this later. It was weird. I wore this, I just happened to wear the shirt, but this somehow was good for him. All the supply, he was overloaded with it. People were telling, and my pastor and the police told me not to let him come home. I let him come home. So when I sit here and I tell you that I made mistakes with my kids, and I'm trying to rectify that now by making better decisions going forward, this is another one of them. I felt trapped. I really did. I didn't know what I knew even a few months later. I felt trapped. I wanted out of this marriage. I didn't know what to do. So here he was, and suddenly he was the way that he used to be when we were dating. He was love bombing me because he was loaded up with supply. So this happened in August. He came home, and I still wasn't giving him supply. It quickly dwindled down. Between August and December, when we split up for good, I really don't remember how many times I had to call the police. He sank right back to where he was before because I wasn't maintaining the narcissistic supply. He was down to a zero balance again, and it had to be full up. This is the thing with a narcissist. If you give them constant supply, if you just have if you're nobody, your entire reality, your whole world is taking care of the narcissist to the point where you neglect yourself, it's only them. Just say you're able to do that, and you're able to give your narcissist 100% supply, 90% supply. They're going to be okay. They're still lying and cheating and stealing from you, but their personality might be okay. at the beginning of my relationship for the first few years, he was getting good narcissistic supply from me, and he wasn't that bad. Once the kids started, when the kids were involved and I was doing more things with them or I was busy with other stuff, now I wasn't neglecting him, but it wasn't 24/7 my ex. He started giving me more and more silent treatments. By the end, when I stopped giving him narcissistic supply purposefully, and this started in 2016, so in 3 years, he was getting no supply, he collapsed. There were times this man was pulled out of my house right in front of the kids. So here we go. My ex, my kids, back to the beginning when Joe and I were talking about, how we wanted to raise our kids versus how they were raised. My kids saw my ex forcibly dragged out of my house, kicking and screaming, calling me every name in the book. Every name. He was horrible and vile right in front of the kids because I was not okay living with somebody that was giving me a silent treatment. He went crazy, and he did that multiple times I can't remember how many times I called the police. This is your reality when it comes to a narcissist. So if a narcissist has good supply, they might be okay, but they're hollow. They're like one of those chocolate Easter rabbits, at Easter that has nothing inside. A little bit of pressure, they will completely collapse, crumble, gone. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope it helped you. I hope it helped somebody recognize the reality of what narcissistic supply means and how crucial it is and how important it is to put yourself first, put your kids first. A narcissist doesn't change. They can't change, but you can. Everything in your life, in your kids' life, depends on you making the best decisions as early as possible. So grateful for everybody's support. I'm going to be back on Monday with Joe. We call it our date night. We do a video together on Saturday nights that I release on Monday. And on Wednesday, I will be back and I'll fill you in on how it went with my kids. So again, thank you. I hope everybody has a wonderful day. I hope everybody has a wonderful weekend. And I will see you on Monday. God bless.